Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Grow Your Ayurvedic Business. This is week 4, Legalities of Practice. I'm Jacob Griscom, and this is an Everyday Ayurveda production. So as always, let's start by creating our opening space here, preparing ourselves and doing an opening meditation to come together. First, make sure that you're creating an environment that's free of distractions so you can be present for this information. Take it in. It's actually the most efficient way that we can ever do anything. There's an illusion to the efficiency of multitasking. We're actually much more efficient when we do things in concentrated chunks, one thing at a time. So to make sure that we're doing that tonight, go ahead and turn off all distractions. The big ones, of course, are your cell phone, any text messaging, email, any instant messaging on your computer, and create a quiet and focused space. And then sitting in a comfortable, upright posture, with your spine erect, but your body relaxed. Go ahead and close your eyes. Calm your breath. Bring your mind within. Come into the present moment with our Soham meditation. Just simply watching the flow of the breath. Incredibly powerful practice. Bringing the mind to the sound of each inhalation. So, and the exhalation, hum. Enjoying the natural pauses of peace and stillness between each inhalation and exhalation. And since this meditation is short, allow your mind to become instantly still. Do maybe 10 breaths with the Soham. Come immediately into the present moment. As the mind becomes still and quiet, the body automatically opens up. So help that process along by consciously opening your body from head to toe. Feeling our group, our collective Ayurvedic community, allowing yourself and your contribution to be felt. And from where you are right now, you can chant with me the Gayatri mantra. Om Bhuvaswaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om. Om. Namaste. Welcome. We're already on week 4, and tonight we'll be discussing the legalities of practice. So the first slide for me to present to you is a huge disclaimer. I, Jacob Griscom, am many things. One thing I'm not is an attorney. I feel okay about that. So this presentation, since I'm not an attorney, this presentation should not be considered legal advice. And this discussion should not substitute for the personal advice of a qualified legal professional. That being said, I think this is an excellent job of researching some of the most pertinent issues to be aware of in practice and some of the low-hanging fruit to take advantage of. And most importantly, I want to encourage you with this information here tonight to not get bottlenecked. Don't let this become a stop in the flow of your business. Don't make this out to be basically more important than it needs to be for wherever you are right now. So my warning is that we live in a world where there are lots of layers of things that get between people and their passion, doing really what they're here to do. This come in many forms, but one form are some of the cumbersome systems that again have their value and their advantages, but also have a lot of challenges to them. If we were to just directly ask most people, if we could get to the heart, what's your 100%? Where's your heart at? What would you want to be doing? Very few people are living the lives that they want to live fully. So don't let this be one more reason for that not to happen. These topics can generate some fear, and again, fear is just energy that comes up, new awareness that expands beyond perhaps the container that's already there to hold it. And when we contract around that energy or move away from it, then it can get in the way of moving forward. So for tonight, and when you're watching this webinar, just be present with the feelings that arise. Allow them to be whatever they need to be. Give them your conscious awareness. Be with them. And continue to move forward. The 4 areas that we're going to talk about tonight are basically areas of protection, and we'll discuss the ways that they protect an Ayurvedic practitioner in business. The first point that we'll be discussing is incorporation, or an LLC, which is a limited liability company. For almost all of you that are listening to this, you're most likely going to find that an LLC, limited liability company, is more in line with your needs as an individual, simply because an incorporation requires oftentimes more people. It requires a board. There are more things to report on. It's a bit more of a developed legal structure. So we'll get into that a little bit here tonight, and then I'll show you where to look in and research and find out sort of what seems the most right for you and how to get any advice or support if you feel at all confused about that. The second area is professional liability insurance that is available for practitioners in the United States. If you're listening to this and you are in Europe or Australia or another country, different insurance may or may not be available for you as an Ayurvedic practitioner. And as things become available, we'll make sure to make it available, make that information available to you on the Mastermind site. So again, if you are listening to this in another country and you can help fill in the gap, that's excellent. Go ahead and let us know, and we'll put the information up so that other practitioners in your country can know what you know. The third area that we'll be discussing is your informed consent form. This is an area that probably has the most variation, simply because state to state laws vary. And we'll talk a little bit about what to do with that here tonight. The fourth area, and this is universal, this is what we can really consider the lowest hanging fruit, is providing some form of what we can basically call a money-back guarantee. So there are four points that we're going to go into, and let's go ahead and dive on in. And again, as always, as questions come up for you, you can note them and you can go ahead and type them into the question pane. And if they haven't been answered by the end of the presentation, then it'll give us a chance to address them at the end. And then I can also open up the lines and answer questions directly at the end with the time that we have left, and we should have plenty. So the first point here is incorporation, or an LLC, a limited liability company. The way that this protects you is it protects your personal assets. Essentially, a corporation is a legal entity that's created under the laws of a state, designed to establish the entity as a separate legal entity, having its own privileges and liabilities distinct from those of its members. So what this is saying in short order is that you're creating like another person. You're creating a separate person that you're operating within, a separate entity. And so what that means is that if something happens to that corporation, if there's some legal issue with the corporation, then your personal assets are not involved. Your house, your stock option, anything that you have separately that is a personal asset is not subject to being involved with anything legally that's happening with your business. So you're creating a layer of protection by creating a separate legal entity. Has a lot of interesting ramifications in our world by being able to create these entities that have the same sort of rights in many ways as an individual person would as like a sole proprietor. So a limited liability company, an LLC, is a flexible form of enterprise that blends elements of a partnership and corporate structures. So you've got some of the corporate structures, but it takes away some of them that are more burdensome. For example, with a corporation, the need to have a board of directors and take minutes and record those meetings. A lot of other ways that the tax structures vary between a corporation and a limited liability company. I'm going to point you towards a resource in here at LegalZoom that you can check out. It's also going to be directly in the summary for this week. You can click on it, and you can go there directly and watch some videos and just learn a little bit about the distinctions. But for most of you, if you're a solopreneur, an Ayurvedic practitioner, the LLC is probably going to be the better fit for you. But go ahead and check those out and look at the variances. Both of them provide the same level of protection. The differences is in some of the tax structure and the requirements of a corporation versus an LLC in terms of what you need to report on, say, on a quarterly or annual basis and how you do your taxes. So again, you can easily form a corporation or start a limited liability company online. And where I recommend doing that is with LegalZoom. You can really just go start to finish, be guided all the way. It's pretty, relatively inexpensive, and that will get you everything that you need. The next level of protection that we're going to be talking about here is professional liability insurance. And the protection you're getting here is basically covering the cost for legal issues. So get the distinction here, right, is that in the first case, you're creating a separate entity for your business. So that protects your personal assets. But it doesn't necessarily mean that any business, stuff can happen. And you could end up in some sort of if anything, God forbid, happens to you legally in your business, not only are you protected personally by having a corporation, but by having liability insurance, you're basically covered for the costs of any legal issues that were to happen in relation to your business. So one level protects your personal assets. The next level protects you against costs for any issues that do arise. Liability insurance protects you in the event you are sued for claims that come within the coverage of the insurance policy. So you just need to see what's covered by your insurance policy. I got a chance to connect in with Hub International, which is the professional liability insurance available for Ayurvedic services. And you can learn more on NAMA's website at ayurveda-nama.org. The premiums that you would pay vary greatly from state to state, but the services that are covered pretty much cover everything that you would need as an Ayurvedic practitioner. These are the things that the professional liability insurance covers. It's going to cover all of your Ayurvedic personal wellness consultations, any herbal compound mixes and preparations, which means that you can make your own formulas. You can give those to clients and patients. That would be covered. You know, if some suit were to arise out of something like that, you know, that would be covered. Ayurvedic wellness lectures, seminars, and workshops. You know, certainly, you know, any of the advice that you're giving in classes or seminars or workshops, if somebody were to decide that, you know, they heard something from you and in one of your lectures, seminars, or workshops, and, you know, they followed that advice and they were basically convinced that harm came to them as a result of that and decided to sue you for that, well, this would cover that. Ayurvedic treatments, including Abhyanga, Swedna, and Shirodhara. So this is a big one, right? Any of the body therapies. Even Ayurvedic Panchakarma, our whole Panchakarma therapy is covered under this liability insurance. Yoga, and then, of course, you know, massage therapy. So really seems to be really quite comprehensive. You know, the good news is that you know, this doesn't happen a whole lot, and you know, the biggest reason that legal issues arise have to do with communication in the beginning, right? When communication isn't clear, when there's something that's not addressed well in a relationship, that's where the seeds of these sort of challenges emerge. So these two levels protect you against something that hopefully is fairly rare to begin with. The third level is your informed consent form. Now this one's important, right? This is something that you all want to have. Basically, whenever initial paperwork is completed by a client, this is going to be one of the forms that you want to have them, you know, fill out. So whatever else you ask from them, and I'll be providing some templates of things that you can collect from clients down the road. This is the informed consent, and one thing that I'll be giving you is a basic template that you can use that follows the certainly the universal laws that are going to be true regardless of where you're practicing. So you can basically plug in your information, and you can use that, and you can adapt that as you like. But that will give you, that will give you at least the starting place, at making sure that if you do not have an MD degree, if you don't have a medical doctor's degree, you are not legally allowed to diagnose, prevent, treat, or cure diseases. All right? So this level of protection protects you from the law, and you'll note the asterisk there. Laws vary from state to state. And you'll want to learn more about health freedom laws in your state through the National Health Freedom Coalition. And the website's there as well as in the weekly summary report here, nationalhealthfreedom.org. Different states are in different stages around addressing the whole concept of health freedom. Finding that place where people obviously are acknowledging that the role that complementary and alternative medicine has to play is huge, that people spend their own money on this, and that it fills a really important gap in our current medical system. The current medical care has gaping holes in it. And it's important that people have access to practitioners. So it's finding that blend. Each state has to go through its process of determining the blend between being able to give people access to what they want, and then also truly from the concern for the public well-being, figuring out how to protect individuals in that process, because these are unregulated, unlicensed disciplines. And so by nature, they are hard to really kind of get a full grip on. So anything that's not licensed is typically going to fall under health freedom law, and you can learn what's going on in your state. And ultimately, this is probably something that's worth playing a role in helping to develop, getting your voice involved, or contributing to in some way or another, because this affects really the evolution of healthcare. So it's an important issue, and it's really what we address in terms of laws. So again, check out what's going on in your state. Use the template as a starting place. Realize that even with that template in place, based on your state's laws, you may not technically be covered if you don't have a health freedom law in place. And yet, at the same time, it's really hard to say, is that going to stop practitioners? And obviously, in any state you look at, there are hundreds and thousands of practitioners that fall into this interesting gray zone where health freedom law is not currently in place, and yet, it doesn't stop people from needing the services that they offer. So it's not that this is something, especially now, that a whole lot of states are necessarily spending a lot of energy going after practitioners, but it's still important to be aware of it and make sure that you've done everything that you can within your state without it meaning that you're just stopped altogether until legislation passes. So here's what you want to do, and the template really covers this as well. You want to disclose in writing that you are not licensed, unless you are an MD. You are not licensed, and no state-recognized educational and training standards exist for your practice. And we're speaking specifically to Ayurveda here. That in any state, we do not have licensure for Ayurvedic practice. You also want to cover that the client has the right to choose to go to a licensed provider of healthcare. And in the template, I suggest even actually recommending that if somebody has an undiagnosed condition, that you recommend that they get that diagnosed by a medical doctor, or at least that they consciously are choosing to forego that process. Right? So it's something they've been made aware of. Then the third thing is that the type of service and or treatments to be provided. So you basically want to say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what your care can include. In the template, I made it really general. You can obviously get more specific as you get clear about exactly what the structure of your care looks like and what sort of support services and treatments you're going to be offering. And then fourth is to list the qualifications that you do have. Where have you studied? What programs have you completed? Anything relevant to the types of services and treatments that you're going to be providing, you can include that under your qualifications in your informed consent. Here's what not to do. This is a way, certainly, to almost ensure that you would get in trouble, is to do any of these things. So do not represent yourself as a licensed professional if you are not one. Do not perform surgery or invasive treatments. Do not prescribe, administer, or recommend the discontinuation of controlled substances and drugs prescribed by a licensed healthcare professional. So basically, this is probably one of the ones you want to be most aware of, is you may ask people, you may ask clients, what pharmaceutical medications and supplements and otherwise they are currently taking. They may even ask you, do you think I should be taking this? So that's an area where you want to refer, a couple things you can do there, Ray. You can refer them to literature about the drug, making sure that if for any reason they have not been, they don't know what this drug is doing in them, they don't know how it's affecting them, they don't know what side effects are possible. If for any reason that's been left out and they don't have that, You can pull that information up online directly from the site. All of that information needs to be reported by the manufacturer of the drug, and you can provide that to them. So you can say, hey, I can't comment on, legally I cannot comment on whether or not you should or should not be taking this drug. What I can do is point you in the direction of the literature here, and we can even look over it together, and you can see that this symptom that you're experiencing, for example, is listed as a potential side effect of the drug. Whether it's cause or correlation, again, I can't comment on that, but you can be well informed. You can help them with that. In terms of making any changes, obviously, to any prescribed drugs, this is where you want to refer them back to their healthcare professional. And you can, here's one thing that I've done, for example, is say, we've noted, hey, this is here's a side effect. Here's some of the other research that we've pulled up on this drug. And looking at this together, from everything we can tell, this seems to be very much connected. And you may be, you want to work with your practitioner to gradually reduce the dosage that you need here, or get off of it altogether. Especially if we were looking at addressing some of the underlying causes of this challenges in the first place. So that's really the line to probably walk the most carefully. Make sure that you communicate that really clearly, what you're allowed to discuss and not discuss. But at the same time, you don't need to be totally obtruse about this. You can help guide people in the right direction and encourage conversations with their doctor to help them achieve their health goals. So if one of their health goals is to overcome a symptom that they're experiencing, and the symptom is a known side effect of that drug, then they can talk with their doctor about the options in terms of going for that. Ultimately, the person is able to make their own choices. So even if their doctor recommends they do one thing, they can do something else. They just they need that to be their choice, and not something that they has been your recommendation that they're taking, and now you're responsible for. So the fourth thing not to do is to cause a risk of injury, mental or physical illness, or death. So what does that mean? Well, this is kind of interesting, right? To cause a risk of injury. A risk of injury. That's tough, especially if you are doing these body therapies. You essentially just need to be as careful as you can and take as many precautions as you can to be safe, right? To not hurt people. The best thing to do is to not do stuff that you haven't done before or haven't been trained to do or don't feel comfortable doing. Those are things that could potentially cause a risk of injury. And that being said, you might do the same thing to a lot of different people, and you never know. Sometimes with a very simple procedure, even a massage, stuff can happen. So that one's tough. But as best you can, obviously, don't do the things that you don't know how to do or don't know what the effect might be. Try not to experiment on your patients in any dangerous ways. Then, of course, mental or physical illness. Well, this is quite interesting as well, right? Usually we're going to be working with people that have goals for their health. So, what you're going to recommend to them is going to be easier to not cause mental or physical illness the more simple those recommendations are. The more simple those recommendations are, the more that they stick to our foundational pieces of addressing the three pillars of life, right, with behavior: food, sleep, and sex. Food being what we take into our five senses and how that's digested. Sleep being the balance between activity and rest. And sex being the management of our vital energy, which often comes into not just sexual activity, sexual energy, but also the breath, meditation, affirmation, any internal work that works with energy. When we stick to our foundations, those risks of mental or physical illness are going to be much less. As treatments and recommendations get more complicated, more involved, certainly more if they become more restrictive or more potent in measure, the more powerful something is and specified, the more likely, of course, especially if you don't know how to use it properly, the more likely it's going to end up in this other category. So certainly also you don't want to try not to kill your clients. That would be excellent. So causing a risk of injury, mental or physical illness, or death. So these are the pieces. And here's the last area that I want to talk with you about, and this is about creating a money-back guarantee. The main protection here is a protection from fear around money. Protection from fear around money. That's for yourself as well as the client. As much as possible, we want the investment in our services to be joyful and as clear as can be and take the risk off the table. And by having a policy like this around the exchange of money, you are right away setting the ground for a lot of trust and rapport and a clear sense that if there were to be a squabble around money, it's going to be much less likely if you have a money-back guarantee. That also helps you come from a place as a practitioner that's the most powerful, where you want this work for your clients far more than you want another client for your business. So I'll say that again, that the place that you're coming from is wanting this work for your clients, wanting this transformation in their lives, wanting as much as possible to serve them, help them, support them to achieve these goals that they want in their life, far more than wanting just another client in your business. Now, if somebody that's a prospective client doesn't become a client, might you feel disappointed? Yeah. But as much as possible, this will set you up and reinforce coming from a place that you feel disappointed because you want it for them and you know that it would be significant for them, more so than you feel disappointed that you lost a client. That really creates an abundant and magnetic energy. And we're going to be talking about, when we go through the enrollment process, presenting your guarantee even before you present your rates or the investment in your services. And you'll just notice the effect that creates both in you and in your client to really removing as much of the risk and the fear around money as possible for both of you. So again, we cover that in the enrollment process before discussing your fees. And here's the basis of how it works. Essentially, if your client doesn't love the work they're doing with you, if they don't feel like it's absolutely exactly what they need to overcome the challenges that they have and to achieve the results with their health that they're looking to achieve or move towards, then they can discontinue. And they won't be on the hook for any further coaching or consulting with you, and you'll refund every penny they've paid. So get the feel for what happens when you do that. When you say that in your enrollment process, before you present your fees, it conveys a lot of confidence. It really helps you anchor that spot in yourself of wanting this work for them. And it right there removes a huge barrier to entry, that they should at least get started after they've gone through the enrollment process and you've built the value, you've uncovered the cost and the needs, and you've really been able to get a sense that this is a clear fit for helping them get where they want to get. Well, let's go ahead and take this sense of as much of the risk off the table to getting started as possible and say, I want you to get started with this. I know this is going to be really valuable for you. But if for any reason it's not, if this doesn't feel like a fit, then I want you to know that I'm not in a business where I'm interested at all in taking money from people that are not receiving massive amounts of value and feel like this is one of the best investments they've ever made. So what a great place to come from, and I definitely recommend that. That's something that you can implement right away. So here's the implementation homework for this week, and I said this is optional. First and foremost this week, if you're not yet clear on your niche, if you're still working on your surveys, your interviews, make that still your priority. Get really clear about your market, and don't let yourself get distracted. You can come to this at any point in your business. Don't hold that this is the most urgent area. Hold that this is something to definitely get into at some point or another. But really at this point in the program, hone in on getting to know your market and being ready for next week, which is going to be about building your program and learning how to really serve that market. A lot of this other stuff actually even can get clarified once you're really clear about the market that you're working with and how you're working with them. Certainly some of the stuff in your informed consent form, the way that you word that, some of the documents in your Incorporation or LLC documentation may vary, and you'll want to be clear about what you're doing and how you're doing it as you write it in there. And certainly the what you're looking into in the laws of your state will be clarified once you know exactly how you're going to be working with people and how that fits in. So here's the homework to get to sort of at your convenience. One would be to start your limited liability company, or if it seems more appropriate, your corporation. Second is to call or email the Hub International representative to learn more about professional liability insurance in your state, what those premiums will look like, and just make a decision around whether that seems like it's worth it for you and a fit. The third is to research the health freedom laws in your state or consult with a qualified legal professional around malpractice, around essentially what's doable for you and not in your state, and draft your informed consent form that you can use with your initial paperwork. And then finally, of course, post a comment on the blog with any questions, thoughts to help anchor and implement what you're learning and keep the conversation going with the group. And of course, meet with your mastermind group. And again, this week, I would encourage all of you to really just, kind of almost take this discussion offline for now until the folks in your mastermind group are really where you need to be and you feel comfortable with your niche. That'll be 100 times more important for what we're going to be going into in the program from here right away than these legalities of practice topics. So I wanted to include these. It seemed like the best point in the program to go for it, but not necessarily the order of operations that you need to do it. So that being said, we'll go ahead and see what sort of questions we have tonight, and look forward to next week getting into Integral Ayurveda and building your program. So let me see what questions have popped up here on the question panel first, and then I'll also look at any hands that are raised and can open up your line. Okay, from Christine, regarding the consent form, how does that apply to us, as although we don't diagnose and treat disease, we do focus on prevention? Yeah, that is true. That is true. You do focus on prevention in that sense. In fact, there are 3 levels of healthcare that we can really talk about. One is sort of the survival level, which can also be sort of the correction of disease. The next is the prevention level, which is obviously preventing disease. And then the third and sort of highest and unlimited level of health is the thriving level of health. How do we really optimize our health and our human potential? So all 3 of those are relevant actually to you as a practitioner. All of the terms, in fact, that we talk about curing and treating and diagnosing, these are all part of classical Ayurveda, and they're part of Ayurvedic practice. They're part of the science of life. So the way the law states it, though, is that you cannot say that you do these things. You cannot say that you diagnose and treat disease or that you prevent or cure a particular disease. So what you'll note is that in the informed consent forms, you don't say any of that. In fact, you specifically say that you don't do that. What you do is focus on the underlying causes of harmony, of balance, of support. So even if you're focusing on a niche that is identified by having a particular disorder, like it might be people with diabetes, your informed consent will say, I do not treat or cure diabetes. What I would do is address the underlying lifestyle and dietary factors that support health. Right? So I know that it's a fine line. I know that it's gray. Fortunately, in many states, the law is in our favor, and they said that's exactly how we should say it and how we should communicate it. So if your informed consent, and your informed consent form says that, that's really kind of the best you can do with what we have. So that that's kind of the main thing. It's a little bit gray, I know, and yet at the same time, it's what we have to work with. And you can be as clear as possible and rooted in yourself that truly what you're doing is you really aren't focusing at all on the disease. You're focusing on the individual, and you're focusing on that individual in relationship with their environment. It is really a very different paradigm and framework for looking at it. Now, if you look at classical Ayurveda and you look at the text, obviously we diagnosed all sorts of diseases. That's what we do. And if you've studied clinical Ayurveda, then you've learned the names of these diseases from a classical Ayurvedic perspective. So practicing here in the West, unless again you are a medical doctor, or if you're practicing in India as a BAMS, and you've got different laws, you should really sort of treat yourself as a health coach and continue to use language until things change that goes in line with the laws that are in place. It won't dampen the quality or depth of your work really in any way, but it will keep things clean and make sure that you're in line with the law to the best of your ability. So from Gabby, you love that last statement. Will that be available in the audio of this webinar? You silver-tongued fox. Well, thanks, Gabby. I'm not sure which comment that was in particular, but hopefully it sounded like it was a fit for you. So let me know. And then Anuradha, does having a money-back guarantee create pressure on the practitioner to keep clients happy by bending over backward, i.e. people-pleasing unnecessarily? Well, each individual has to answer for themselves the sort of stuff that comes up when you think about offering a guarantee. I know that when I first started recommending a guarantee, I remember specifically, I was terrified to do it. I said, what if everybody just takes me up on the offer, takes advantage of this, and I'm putting all this work out, and it really was just coming from a place of fear. Since I started doing it years ago in personal health and healing, and have continued it in my business coaching and consulting, I've never looked back. And in fact, the only time that I've ever had anybody take me up on it has always been just typically after, maybe like the first session, or even before we got started with the first official session, and they just decided, that the timing was off. It just really wasn't a fit. The conditions in their life were such that they just really weren't going to give it the time and the attention to get the full value out of it. And when that's the case, I prefer that because I want people to get the value out of what we're doing. So no, I wouldn't say that it by any needs to create any pressure on the practitioner to keep clients happy by bending over backward. The way that we keep clients happy is by being really clear about helping them clarify their vision and goals for their health, helping them understand the things that they're doing currently that are creating their challenges and the new behaviors that are going to create new results for them, and helping them implement that in their lives. Being honest with them, holding accountability, holding safe space and trust really doesn't have anything to do with a guarantee or not. And if you ever were to just not have a great experience with a client and just didn't feel like a fit, then you've got two good benefits that actually come from that. The first is that they get to teach you something about your business and your practice. and see if there's a way that you can improve how you work with people, right? Our clients continue to be lights and mirrors for our own growth. So if something comes up with a client, it's a great opportunity to look within and say, okay, what can I improve here, myself or in my business, in the way that I'm doing this? So that's sort of the first gift, if that were to happen. But again, I think you'll find that it's going to be a pretty rare occurrence if it ever happens at all, especially after working a full 30 days with people under the structure that we're going to be discussing here in the next few weeks going forward. The second gift, of course, is that if it's really not a client working a fit with a client, then it's kind of nice to be able to hand that sort of complete that relationship, and this is a way to complete that relationship in a clean way, and say, hey, this wasn't a fit, and this is my offer, this is the way that I do it. I'm going to return your money, and then you've got kind of a clean completion to that relationship, rather than it being something where somebody leaves, they're dissatisfied, but they've also paid you money, and so that has a way of ultimately costing your business a lot more. It hangs out there as this sort of incomplete, unfinished energy, because I've had that experience as well. And it can also tangibly show up as that client just not saying the best things about you or your business. Whereas if you end clean with them, they're likely, even if it wasn't a good fit, to still think very highly of you and to appreciate and respect you. So those are my thoughts on that, and I look forward to seeing, as you all put this into practice, what your experiences are, what sort of feedback you get. I think that you'll notice that it's something that feels really positive for you, but let me know. And then Rolinda, can I repeat those three? I'm not sure what those three are, but the next one from you is, when do you introduce the informed consent form? After the discussion of the guarantee, but before the cost of the proposed enrollment plan? No, what will happen is, when somebody gets to the point of, this is the model that we'll be discussing, a free introductory session with you. What that introductory session is going to end in is a presentation of your services, the structure of your coaching or consulting, and then your guarantee, and then the investment in your services. I wouldn't give the person any paperwork, including informed consent or any other initial client paperwork, until after they've decided to go forward, until you've scheduled their first official session, and you've got them in your calendar, and you've set them up, they've paid you, and then you give them the paperwork. So it's going to happen after your enrollment session with them, and after they decide to move forward with you, and then before your next meeting, your first official meeting. And then you were saying, I've added wellness consultation and coaching to the words on my website. Yeah, that's fine. Good. Oh, and it said you couldn't hear me for a moment, and now you can. So hopefully that's resolved. So let me know. Type in any other questions you have here for us, and then let me also see. You can also raise your hands. I'm done with all the ones in the question pane. So if you want to raise your hand directly, I can open your line and clarify any of these points or anything else. If we end up also completing early and there's nothing else there, always feel free to shoot me an email, and we can cover anything else that way. Certainly check in with your group. And if any of you have an attorney that you already work with, or somebody in the family that practices law, it's great to get their feedback, because they'll communicate these things in a different way for you. They'll help you look at these issues. Maybe can help you through this process. There's, again, a lot of value whenever somebody has a specific area that they focus on. That creates a lot of value, and this is an example, why and how. So just as attorneys and CPAs get paid good money, get paid well for doing very specific work, that's the camp that we live in as well. We help people with specific challenges get specific results. and that's one of the cornerstones of value, which of course translates into getting paid well. So I'll go ahead and give it, say, one more minute here. If you have any other questions, go ahead and type them into the question pane or raise your hand and I'll open up your line. Oh, here we go. So Gabby, you're clarifying what resonated with you was, I want you to get started. Gotcha. Thanks, Gabby, for the clarification on that. That's great. So any other questions, go ahead and pop them in there, or go ahead and raise your hand. And if not here, we can go ahead and wrap up early tonight and follow up with any other questions. Again, you can post things on the blog for the replay, in the Mastermind forum with your group, or to me directly. Okay, this is from Gabby. One last question here. EIN, which are employee identification numbers, are useful for being able to process visas, etc. I needed one. I needed one as a sole practitioner. So is that a question? Basically, when you're a sole practitioner, yeah, you can have an EIN, or you can also use your Social Security number. That's relevant in a lot of places. Once you incorporate, again, you're creating a separate entity, and so then you would definitely have an employee identification number at that point. You would no longer use your Social Security number. You're very welcome, Michelle. Thank you so much. And somebody raised their hand here, so let's grab that. Oh, actually, it went back down. So I think we're good. I'll give it just one more second here to answer any other last-minute questions. Anything else that's burning in you? And then next week, I'm really looking forward to being with all of you and taking what you're getting from your niche, the needs that you're exploring and understanding, and really building this into your whole philosophy, your whole theory of change. I notice when I work with clients one-on-one, this is when things really come to life, and you get the depth of, well, what we're really offering people here. So I'm looking forward to that. Have an amazing week. Meet with your mastermind group. Keep in touch throughout. Let me know about the actions you're taking, the results you're getting, any questions that you have. So much love to all of you. Really, I feel that so deeply. Before I was getting on this call, just as always, I just felt the energy coming up in me, and I said, yeah, these are all the signs of being in love, and I like that. So I'll talk with you all next week. Much love. Have a great one. Namaste.